Hello everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Debbie McKeegan and I am the Fespa Textile Ambassador, and I am so pleased to have found Mike Scrutton of Adobe here in Berlin.
All the way from relocated from wherever I should be to Berlin. It's great to be back at Fespa in 2025.
Yeah, time flies, it certainly does.
It does.
Absolutely. So I was lucky enough to join your press conference the other day and sit in on all of the latest innovations for the Adobe PDF print engine. 7, I believe.
Yes.
Yep. And there are so many innovations at the show, and I think what so often happens at print show is you need to look underneath all of that. You need to look how it's wired. Why is it performing so well? Why does it work? Why is it giving you great color management? Why is it doing all of those things? And what does it need? So there were so many standout innovations in your talk. I'd like you to let's explore and highlight which ones you think are the groundbreaking, the ones that are really going to change the industry. Once, as you said, within 6 months or so, they are then integrated in the machinery that we see here at the show. And I'd like to discuss this with a textile bias, if that's possible.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, obviously the technology is applicable to any type of market segment, be it packaging, commercial printing, textiles.
Yeah.
But in the textile space, there are some very, very particular common things which keep coming up, which having the right technology at the rip to having the printer really makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, in the textile space, we're designing with RGB rather than with CMYK. Right? We don't have a dominant set of CMYK dyes and pigments that we're using, so we're designing in that RGB space. So that means the type of files we're seeing are different. Very often we're having to treat colors differently depending on whether we're printing with natural fibers or man-made fibers.
So they were the dye, subpigment, or reactive, the
Right.
different ink sets.
Right,
okay.
that we're working with.
Yeah, and of course you've got like D to G, D to F. You've got so many different ways of applying it to the fabric now, and or each one giving you different yields.
Absolutely, and also what we find, obviously, very commonly in the apparel and textile space is the need to handle substrates that aren't white, right? We don't bleach everything and wash everything before we start. We want to print on, a coloured fabric.
That's going to trend more though as well, because we don't want to add OBAs into our textiles anymore. We used to want, a high quality raw grey fabric, we call them, even though they're not grey, GREIGE. Used to be bright and shiny white. We actually, as we moved to more sustainable finishing processes for the woven fabrics and the knitted fabrics that we create, we're dropping out a lot of those chemicals. So you're not, you're looking at a more natural feel and natural surface that, as you say, could be dyed fabric, or it could be, it could be a flax linen that's a lovely dark kind of mushroomy beige, and any shade of cream all the way to white.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is obviously we're used to the idea from a print technology perspective that people will put a white underbase or something down first.
Yeah.
Right. So that they can do that.
Yeah.
What we're doing with the PDF Print Engine 7 is making it easier to automatically add white base where you would need it.
Right.
Automatically.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as saying, hey, your original design was a rectangle on your screen. Your screen was rectangular, so let's go put white over a rectangle.
Which all, in very different technologies, that affects handle.
Completely.
Ink limits, costs, drying, curing times, energy. There are so many implications. Lots of nuances. Yeah.
So being able to handle that sort of stuff automatically, because we actually have all the information that's coming from the design, we know where we need to put that.
Yeah.
Right. And so that optimal usage of white is a very important thing.
Very, very important.
When it comes to the color, like we said, we're constantly designing in RGB, and we need to map that to CMYK or whatever colors that we're using in our print process. Right? Maybe we have more than 4 colors or 4 channels of print on our printers. If you look around the show and some of the devices they have here, they're going beyond CMYK to expand the color gamut.
Yeah.
Right? They're bringing in greens and oranges and stuff to try and make those colors richer, to provide more of the colors that you might have seen on the screen.
And you've always got that fight, haven't you, within the machine and within the rip itself? Because when we talk CMYK, that's because you've, so many technologies, you've got 4 inks in your machine, or you've got 6 inks in your machine, or you've got 8. And again, depending on where you're printing, you're adding, as you said, a light magenta or a grey or an orange, because you're building your gamut out depending on your ink sets.
Right.
In an RGB space.
That's right.
Which is so much bigger than the typical signage space very much of CMYK.
Yeah, totally.
And
Totally.
it's much bigger.
Yeah, and what happens as well as designers play with these exciting tools that they have now with their applications, they want to make special effects, they want to combine objects, they want to put text over images, they want to merge images together, they want to do nice and complicated things. What happens when this happens in a design tool, and when we try and print this on a printer, to be generic, very often people have the notion, and software has the notion, that, well, if I'm printing, I must be doing CMYK only, and I'm putting myself into a little box, right? And technically what's happening very often at print time is, under the hood, the colours you're giving are being sort of converted to CMYK and then mixed around and transparency applied and this sort of thing. And that's really limiting the number of colours that are available. Now, we might be then taking that CMYK information and printing it using 5, 6, 7, 8 inks. But we're taking it, traditionally, we would take it to the CMYK space first because we're going to print. But one of the innovations that we've introduced with PDF Print Engine version 7 is the idea that we don't actually have to bring it to CMYK first. We can mix colours, we can map these colours before we ever go to the final device space. We call it a device space. If you've got an 8 colours available to you at print time, we can do this manipulation in that 8 colour space so that you're unconstrained in terms of what the manipulations that you're getting. What that means in reality is you're going to be able to reproduce your brand colours, those colours that you've picked for your colourway for this season. You're going to be able to reproduce them more faithfully. You'll be able to blend them or combine them, right, next to each other or overlapping with each other in a more accurate way as well.
You're meeting everyone's expectations.
Meeting the expectations, because you don't want surprises. You don't want to be taking that garment when you finally get it. And that's particularly important as we move into the world of a lot more, on-demand printing, web to print, right? A lot more digitization of some of these processes.
Especially when you start to throw AI pattern generation into all of that as well.
All
it has to be automatic.
We have to automate as much of this stuff as possible. One of the things that I've seen is that where we brought digital devices into play, so very often you might have taken a design and you were going to screen print it, right? And you were going to create your screens in a particular way. You were going to incur a cost. And now you say, okay, well, I'm not going to make many shirts. My run's going to be smaller. I'll print it digitally. But you were basically still trying to create the same product, just using a different technology and reduce some of that setup cost. But that was your reason for moving to digital in the first place. It was doing what I did previously using an analog process.
But with an inkhead.
Now I'm going to do it with an inkhead and do it digitally. Now we realise, in 2025, well, we can do more complicated things. We can do different things. We can do things that we couldn't have done previously using our analog process, right? Something not just that it wouldn't have been economic, but we can literally do a run of 5 or 2 or 1 or something, and that makes things really exciting as well.
It's mapping that generation of layering as well, isn't it? I mean, you see so much incredible innovation going on in 3D as well, especially in the flooring industry. Printing wooden floors and tactile. Canon are doing some incredible things on building those surfaces. So, like you say, within that engine, being able to specify all those different layers, like you say, with that white and what's building on what and how many passes and all the rest of it, generating it through the print engine, through the rip, taking the human hand out of it.
And I think if I were to look to the future, I think this is going to get even more interesting as well. I'm beginning to think, some of our labs about what we're researching for the future. How do we bring in the world of embellishment into the design process as well? How do we start, bedazzling our stuff? How do we start adding silver or gold elements or reflective elements? There'll be technical processes available so we can do that digitally as we're printing these garments. But how do we design for that? Right? How do we make it easy for somebody to design and convey their intent that they would like it to look like this, and convey that information all the way through the process? But very often, the way we've solved this in other sectors is we've expected the designer to be expert in a particular device. This device can do this magic thing, but you have to control it in a very, very precise way. And so, the manufacturer of the equipment is going to create a 500-page manual and give it to the designer and expect them to read it and do it that particular way so it's compatible with that device. The reality is nobody's going to work like that.
Well, when you're globally sourcing, when we talk about moving to close proximity production for super brands, they're like, okay, it might be, it's sold online wherever that online may be, but the truth is that we should manufacture as close to the destination as possible. So you're shifting print hubs around. So it's never been more important that all of that's embedded in that file.
And that's where the automation, I think, is really going to help us as well. And not just that we can automate it, but we can intelligently understand what was the designer looking to achieve. Right? What does the designer want to get? What is this device capable of? How does it need to be controlled? How does it like to be set up, touched? What controls does it want? And have those applied automatically within the print workflow software, so we can get with the minimal amount of work.
So you're allowing the printer or the pre-press department to fine tune. It's almost like we don't want to simplify it too much. It's like batching in a way, is it? You're setting the parameters. And that's what the pre-press does, because that's what it needs to do for that product to go into that workflow automatically and reduce the human hand all the way through.
Totally. So we're beginning to, and we'll start in the next year or so, beginning to talk about Adobe Print Services. What do we offer beyond the web that will make the life of the production side of the operators easier? You don't want to be in a situation where you've had artwork coming from a client, but you have to give it to somebody sitting over there, and they're going to spend 45 minutes modifying this file and tweaking it and dialing this and blah, 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 before you can actually start putting it in production. We want to try and provide tools to make that process easier, automate that process, give the customer an idea of what they're going to get, but then simplify and speed up the path through that preparation step before we get it on the device. Because again, once we start getting in a web to print environment, you're not going to have time. If you're doing one job a day, fine. Spend 20 minutes setting it up at the beginning and then go at it all day. But if you're printing a different job for a different customer every 30 minutes, every 20 minutes, every 10 minutes, you can't afford to spend 40 minutes setting up that one file for every single time you do it.
There's as much work in one SKU as there is in a SKU that prints 10,000 meters. It's just as much work. You have to automate that all the way through. Otherwise, what we do is we meet nobody's expectations and we deliver waste. And the worst thing there is that you deliver waste on demand. We don't want to get back there. The whole point of all of this was that we manufacture on demand sustainably.
We've spoken in the past about the whole idea that we thought this reshoring was going to be a great thing, and then all of a sudden we started just filling up landfill quicker. And we're filling it landfill locally rather than somewhere else. That's not what we want to do. We want to be able to manufacture what we need when we need it. People want less inventory, and they like this idea. And we're used to the idea that I see something online, I go to Etsy. We're used to the idea, I go to Etsy, I can buy something on Etsy, and somebody is going to make that for me and ship it to me, to my door. And it's, I don't know if the Etsification is a verb.
It's a new one.
But the idea that we can do that manufacturing on demand, which also brings us other nice stuff as well, like about personalisation. Now, personalisation will mean different things to different people. It might be that I'm going to get something to size that's going to fit me, or it might just be that I wanted that to be, to look as if it was stitched or flat or whatever, or perhaps I want it to be shiny. But I want to be able to do that as easily as possible, so that we can.
And I think that one of the key points that you made as well about batching, I use the word batching, about automating is all, is that what you're doing is you're setting the parameters of the limits. So you have designers working in gamuts. There's one of the biggest problems from the designer when you're using with freelancers, etc., is that you create something fabulous, but it can't be printed on that specific machine. And you can set all of those parameters and you set that workspace. Really important.
And I think, go on.
Everyone's working in harmony. The e-com's in harmony with the designer, and that's, the customer sees it and off it goes, and it comes out, everyone's expectation is met. That's where we have to get to. I know there are issues at the beginning of that where people are ordering online using e-com because of reflected colour, etc., through screens. But I think, objectively, we should be getting closer.
Let's face it, we always used to handle this problem using sampling. Okay, before I do this and I commit to doing this, I will send you a sample and this is what it's going to look like, and you'll touch like or wash like and this sort of thing. You can't do that. if once you're getting down to an order of a handful.
It's the speed of delivery. You can't do it.
Exactly. Or you need to be able to deliver the final order in a small amount of time. You can't do that. So I think another area we're going to see a lot of growth as well is in the area of the visualization of what am I actually going to get?
Yeah.
Right. And not just seeing a photograph of what am I going to get, but maybe now getting a bit techy. You know, maybe I'm putting my new Meta glasses on, or I'm putting on a headset so I can visualize something in 3D.
And I'm in that room that I've just created. Yeah.
But maybe just the ability to see something on the screen and just nudge it and see what it might look like from a slightly different angle. How is light going to?
Well, it's also like, getting to those nuances of substrate as well.
Yeah.
So have you just put that lovely floral on a silk, or have you put it on a cotton linen?
Yeah.
Or have you put it on a flat wallpaper, or a textured wallpaper, or a metallic wallpaper?
Right.
All of those things absolutely affect the print quality and the final expectation.
It's going to look completely different if you printed it on a linen versus a poly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to look completely different. Yeah. It's going to reflect the light differently. You're going to see the weave. So I think
that's the big gap. That's the big missing gap. And I know you're doing a lot of work on like digital materials. That's where all of this, like, it's going to be like an aligning of the stars very soon, where all of these things just start to blend and work with each other. So you've got real digital materials working in a digital space for e-commerce that's aligned with the machine and the gamut, and a perfect product.
And this is one of the fun things about working at Adobe. Is we have so many different bright people working in so many different fields. We get to like cross-pollinate between the different industries.
Yeah, it's great,
right?
isn't it?
So what we're doing,
perfect partnership.
What we might be doing in some places for packaging and a brand to make their bottle of spirits look nice and showing somebody what the final product will look like. We can take that same technology and then apply it into the textile space as well, and apply it there. And under the hood, it's the same, environmental lighting and materials and this sort of thing. Some of them just happen to be something we're going to manufacture using a fabric, something we're going to weave, and in another case, it's something that we're stamping out of metal. But the underlying technology that we can apply to the problem is pretty common. We just leverage it for different markets.
Gosh. Well, this was a big update, isn't it?
We're really excited.
7. It's really big.
2025 is a big year for us.
Really, really big year. And I guess for the printers out there, for the designers out there, for any creatives, anybody working in the print space, you'll start to see this coming through in technologies.
Yes, we've delivered it to our partners last month.
Yeah.
They're integrating it now. They're lining up the bugs. They'll run all their tests and that sort of thing. I'd expect to start seeing it in products hitting the market towards the end of the year, early next year.
Oh, that's great. It's brilliant. Well, Mike, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We can continue this conversation and go deeper very soon. It's brilliant. Thank you, and thank you.